Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming. My name is Killjoy. Today we're going to be talking about the most recent Tempest Rising demo that got released. It's primarily for the RTS thing that's going on Steam at the moment, so I was like, oh, it's a multiplayer demo. Now, this video isn't necessarily going to be about the multiplayer, because I will hopefully get some footage and get some games of that, but the game allows me to do a skirmish, and I know that this game is coming out now in April, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm super excited. This might be the first time in a while after, I think Crossfire Legion was the last time I got really excited for an RTS. Because this game is very much in the vein of the classic Command & Conquer games, specifically the Tiberian games. Very much like Command & Conquer 3, this one. But I want to use this video to just go over the two main factions and how they play and like my experience playing them. So we're going to start with the Global Defense Force, which is essentially GDI, Global Defense Initiative from Command & Conquer. Very much similar. They do play differently, but they have a lot of similarities. Now, them as a faction, they do... What's cool at the moment is both teams play differently. So, the GDF use Intel comms and network stuff, and what that basically means is a lot of their abilities and a lot of their units work on these different sort of aspects. One of them is Intel, which is essentially what you get, and it allows you to use buy expensive units and very specific units and stuff like that. I think you might also need it for, you have like abilities down the left hand side of the bar, and you can use those to call in certain things, and it's used for that. So their like whole thing is around collecting intel, and you get upgrades and stuff like that, and we'll come on to the upgrades in a minute. So that's one part of it. You also have the comms part of it, which is certain units will give buffs to units in a small area. So you have like a specific unit that might be like, well, in this radius your units fire 15% faster, they move 10% faster, all that sort of stuff. So you already have Intel, which is gathering that and being able to unleash powerful units, comms, which is based on buffs, and then you have the network stuff, which is primarily to do with marking targets, as well as a lot of very drone heavy units that they have. Now, marking targets, a lot of units on that faction can mark targets. So one of the best ones is the little buggy. I can't remember what it's called. We'll come across it in a minute. And you can just set that to shoot mark a target. And if you do that and you start firing it, mark targets can do all sorts of things. They can take more damage. They can be stunned. It just does things like that, essentially. So their whole thing is like high tech. They are the more expensive team with these very specific abilities, as well as like group abilities to mobilize their army. Now, what's cool about them is one thing that I really like about both teams is they build differently. So the Global Defense Force, you build a building, you slap it down, essentially a drone picks up when it's built, drops it in place. One thing I really enjoy is that you can plan out your buildings as much as you want. So as soon as you've got down a power plant, you're like, right, I want a refinery, and then after the refinery I want the barracks built, and you basically can just plot out what you want and then ignore it and come back to it when it's done, which is a really cool way of doing it. It sort of takes that, if you take Red Alert 3, for example, if you play as Rising Sun, they just fire out these like units, core units that you just slap down places, so it's kind of like that, but you do have to wait for the previous building to build, so that's really cool. And then each of the factions both have specialist units as well as sort of regular units. So we're just going to go quickly over the regular units. I'll give my opinion on some of this stuff. So you've got the field scout, which is your basic machine gun infantry, good against like anti-infantry, everything. Most units have an ability as well. Theirs in this case is like a mine. You shut the mine down. I think it like marks all the targets in it for them. It's pretty good. You've got the drone operator, which I think is one of the coolest units I've seen in an RTS in a while. I really like how this unit works. Basically, they run along, their drones above their head. You can manually use an ability to send the drones ahead to scout forwards a little bit, which you can kind of get an idea of what's ahead of you. But the drones themselves fire missiles. That's really cool. They're anti-tank. Really like their design. I really think that just they're a really cool concept of your standard sort of rocket trooper. Engineers in this game as well do a lot more as well. Like the engineers can capture buildings, they can build guard towers. You can also remove mines on an landfill, and you can also repair with them, which is cool seeing that actually happen. You've got grenadiers, which are exactly what they sound. They just basically chuck grenades. They're pretty decent. You've got riot troopers, which I haven't fully used. I'm trying to figure these out, but riot troopers, to my knowledge, can only attack infantry. Oh no, apparently they can attack vehicles as well. I'm kind of reading off the website as I'm doing this, while I'm talking about it, just to remind myself what these units are called. But Riot Troopers seem really good, but I've never really managed to get a lot of them to like do a lot. So that's a unit that I still think must be quite good because they've got a shield, so they must be able to tank a lot of damage. And then you've also got the drone mauler as well, which are like these big heavy rocket dudes that are very good against vehicles. They have bigger drones essentially, and they also fire. I think they also fire out like a rocket thing, but they can also stealth. So it's kind of nuts. In terms of vehicles, these guys, I really like the Sentinel Scout car. That's the one I was on about that has the ability to mark. What's it called? Marking rounds. That's it. So yeah, like, then it marks the target, and then if a target gets destroyed, it gets a load. There's a big buff with it basically. I really like it. I think it's because it's a fast scout unit. It's always good to have at least one of these in whatever army you've got, just to have it set to that ability to mark targets. So it's good for that. You've got hunter tanks for these guys, which are your backbone of your tank. I've not used them a lot because I've done primarily like infantry stuff, but these guys are pretty good. I think they get the ability to like mark targets as well. They're your basic tank. You've got Riot Van, which is an anti-infantry APC, really cool, big chunky thing, rolls around, carry infantry around, really fun. Comms Rig, which is very unique to this team, which is one of those units I was saying that when you deploy it, it basically buffs all the units around it, giving it like increased, I think it's like 10%? It doesn't say on here, but essentially gives them a buff to all the units in attack speed and things like that. It's very, very good. We've got the classic MCVs, we've got the Shield Maiden, which are some of these later units I haven't used a lot of. I've just messed around with them a bit to know that they're pretty fun. Shield Maiden's really cool, very unique. It's all to do with like being able to slow missiles down and take out missiles and things like that. And you can repair things with it. You've got the Scrambler, which I remember this thing is kind of crazy. I'm pretty sure it's like a long-range artillery platform. Seems pretty good. Haven't used a lot of that one either. And the same with the Trebuchet. It's one of the few units I haven't used. But it looks like it's a long-range tank and stuff like that. You've also got aircraft for each of the teams. I've primarily used the... which one is it? I think it's the Queller. It's like this like anti-infantry thing that's pretty good. But all the air units as well. Like you've got like a drone control unit, which is like a big thing with drones. It just goes and bombs the crap out of things, which is really cool. You've got a VTOL. You've got an anti-air helicopter. I need more time with them. I've been primarily playing skirmish and just trying to figure out the teams because there's so many units. But all in all, I actually very much like the design of a lot of the units in this game. I would say the aircraft are probably the most boring in terms of design. I think they could be more different because look from afar it might be quite hard to tell, but a lot of the vehicles and stuff, they're very blocky, very high-tech looking with GDF, which is cool. You do have specialists as well in this game, and they give, like, for example, you've got Sniper, which is obviously good if you're taking out specific targets. You've got Comms Officer, which actually buffs units around it. Riot Medic, that also helps, like, puts down, healing. And then you've got, like, a Drone Assassin, and you've also got a Hijacker. Now, I haven't used all of these that much. Drone Assassin seems very good from what I've used it. Hijacker I need to use more of. But the Comms Officer is, like, seems pretty good considering that you can mark targets and you can also just give a buff to a certain units in the radius. So the fact that each faction also gets like unique specialists as well is really cool. But you've got the support powers, like you've got a support beacon that buffs things. You've got the riot drop, which is really cool. It just drops a ton of units. You can use the spy drone network. You can jam the comms, and your best one is your Tempest airstrike. All in all, I feel like these guys are my playstyle, but I will say that the Tempest Dynasty, the other team, are just as fun to play as. I've always kind of gone for more of the heavy tech stuff. That's just been my playstyle. But Tempest Dynasty, I think, are actually a little bit easier to play. A little bit more straightforward. So their whole thing is you've got like distribution mode. So that's like you can add on upgrades to all your buildings and things like that. Very useful. Oh no, wait, no, that's building upgrades, sorry. You do have something to do with, I can't remember what distribution mode is exactly. And then you got plans. They work more like a classic RTS, guys. You know, you click the building you want. When it's done, you put it down. What's interesting about these guys is that when you first building you build is a machine factory. Because the way they harvest is different. So with GDF, you basically build a building, the harvester goes out. These guys, very much remind me of like similar to Nod when they're turrets. You plonk it down and then things come out of it. They're basically like mobile factories. Little spidery things come out and grab up all the Tempest off the ground. So these guys are a little bit more straightforward. You've got like Dynasty Guard, which is just a basic soldier. Very cheap. You can get a lot of them for anti-infantry. You've then got the Missile Trooper. Again, a lot easier than like... I love the Drone Officers dude. I love the Drone Trooper dude. Great. Fantastic design. Missile Trooper, very straightforward. Does damage to enemy units. These guys have got the Technician, which is very similar to the Engineer. Does all the same stuff. Remove mines, all that. You can repair vehicles. You can also mine labor them. They've got the Igniter Corps, which are flamethrower guys. These guys are great. Yeah, pretty sure these are the flamethrower guys. Yeah, really good. I like these guys because anything with a flamethrower, it's hugely it just does so much damage to buildings and inventory. So it's just an easy way of getting rid of that stuff. The Assault Gunner I haven't used a huge amount of, but the Assault Gunner's got a massive range. These guys have massive cannons. They're anti-infantry and anti-air, and they just basically just lock down an area with essentially a ton of machine gun rounds. Very, very cool unit. Like I said, I haven't used a lot of it, but they seem very powerful. And there's a Demolitionist, which is like a dude that has like multiple guns, I think. Yeah, he's got a pile driver. Oh yeah, he's the one that's got the melee weapon, and he's also got the energy weapon, so you can switch between depending on what you need him for. Also, very, very cool unit. Their vehicles, though, I think are kind of fun. They have a little buggy called the Havoc, which is a missile buggy that can essentially drive around, very good at harassing. But it's very fast and scouting, and actually still very good to have a few in the team. I like them. They've got the Pillager, which is one of my favourite units. So this is a anti-infantry flame tank, essentially. And it does so much damage to buildings. It's like, there's no reason not to have this. They have a bunch of, like, a ton of like abilities that when it blows up, like a dude steps out with a flamethrower. Awesome unit. Like just having these as a little hit squad and going around and like attacking buildings and stuff on their own. Very good. We got the Boar tank, which is just essentially just a tank. There's nothing necessarily fancy about it, but it's got decent armor and it's pretty it does a decent amount of damage for what it is. It's kind of interesting that they've gone for a more straightforward, but I think the whole point of the Dynasty is that it's cheaper stuff that's whatever they can get their hands on, which I really like. Salvage Van, this is a unit I haven't used a lot of, but I really it seems pretty cool. Like, the whole point is you can repair vehicles with it and you can also build around it. I think it's like a mobile sort of just like a forward base without the ability of doing huge amounts. So you can plonk it down, put maybe a couple of turrets around it. It's just like capturing areas. I feel like that'd be really powerful if you're trying to hold like chokeholds and places like that. They've got the MLRS, which is super cool, long range firing thing. Has a huge amount of ammo, but then takes a while to reload. It is long range. If you can protect a couple of these things, you can do some serious damage. Firing like a whole salvo at like an MCV, for example, does a lot of damage to that and takes out a good chunk of health. Then you've got the Voltic tank, which is essentially like a laser tank. Haven't used that a lot. And then you've got the Tempest Sphere as well, which is probably the most interesting unit. It's a big ball that just rolls around and you can boost into things. It's kind of nuts. I like it. You've also got the air units with them. These I haven't played around with that much. Leveler's pretty cool. It's like a long-range anti-tank mortar thing. That's pretty fun. Same with the Hammerhead. That's like a anti-infantry thing. I do need to spend more time with the aircraft to get a full 5 for them. You've also got like... They've got their own plans. You can get a field infirmary. You can do mine drops. You can call in guard. You can lock down things. And you've also got a Tempest instability missile. And their specialists are also pretty cool. The line officer, which is very similar to the other one that the GDF have. Buffs the units around it. You have the operative, which is an anti-vehicle sniper, which is kind of nice. You just pop out that. You got the physicist, which is a really interesting unit. It has like a really bizarre gun. Not used it a huge amount. Need to try more of that. You got the machinist, which I think is also like, yeah, he's like a specialist. He can like sense things, repair things, and then the commando. And I gotta be honest, like I need to spend more time. Like I've spent most of my time playing both these factions with a base set of units and just trying to get a handle on how they play. But I will say this, I honestly think Tempest Rising is the best thing to be coming out right now that is a Command & Conquer, very much like a Command & Conquer game. The game plays really well. I will admit, the footage that you're probably seeing on screen, I had to do some higgery-jiggery to get it to, like, capture properly. So don't take what you're seeing on screen as, like, the... it might look a little blurry. I had to do that to capture it at a decent frame rate. The game actually looks very nice. I like the style of it. It's very clean. It's very easy to see what units are which. All in all, I think this game, when it eventually comes out in April, is going to be one of my possibly a game of the year for me, because the campaign missions I played back when the first demo came out, I really enjoyed. Playing the skirmish now and seeing how many more units are in the game, seeing how you have a lot of specialists, seeing how like each faction works. I even spoke like the doctorings. The doctorings is such a cool idea. It very much takes the upgrade system of other games, and you basically have 3 different trees. It's kind of it reminds me of a mix of the way that Red Alert 3 does its like upgrades and the way that Command & Conquer 3 does its upgrades, and you kind of combine them into one. And so, for example, like you get upgrades for like the GDF, where it's like, oh, your buildings will come out slightly quicker, your harvesters will harvest quicker, or like if you're playing as the Tempest Dynasty, your infantry have more health, they have higher armor. Later down the tree, you get some very big buffs, and each tree is sort of specialist on what you want. Do you want to focus on more of like more vision and more marking, or do you want to focus on your infantry being better and stuff like that? And I it's one of those things that I can see that having a big impact on the game. If you forget about the doctrines, you're like, I'm missing out on some big buffs here, and you have to balance that between the amount of money that's coming in with what you're building and all that sort of stuff. So it's like one of those things that you're going to fit into. You're like, oh, this is the perfect time for it. I've got a spare $1,000 dollars. Boom, there we go. Let's get that doctrine upgraded. Now you have big buffs and things like that. This game also is a little bit quicker than those older Command & Conquer games, so you do have to think about expanding a little bit more, but the game does a really easy way of doing it. You've got MCVs, and with the Tempest Dynasty, you can also just plonk your factory down next to any patch of Tempest and essentially grab it. So I'm really happy with how this game is shaping up. I'm really enjoying it. I know there's a third faction coming. I'll speak more of that probably when the game comes out and I can play it. And I'll obviously do a video on it, but this primarily just playing these 2 factions in this skirmish mode. Absolute blast with it. Really enjoyed my time with it, and I just think this game is in the right direction for being. This is the kind of RTS we've been missing. I think too many RTS games coming out today are trying to be too fancy. We need that kind of Command & Conquer style where it's like, you know, you harvest resources, you have power, and you just basically build units, and they're all fun and different. We've got, you know, other than StarCraft 2, which is played competitively, and Age of Empires, is not a lot of the other RTS games coming out aren't really necessarily for me. I've really been looking forward to this. There are other games coming, but this is the one that's very much high on my list, and I'm very, very excited to play it when it comes out in April. So there you go. There's my thoughts on sort of both the factions, playing them in the skirmish mode. If you like the video I've done today, then hit like. If you want to see more content like this, then hit the subscribe button. Links for Facebook and Twitter will be down below in the description as always. And until next video, I will see you then.